Um, well, hi, everybody. Really great to be with you all this morning. Before I start, I'm gonna pass around a sign-in sheet. If you are willing to receive follow-up communications from me, it would be great to get your contact information. Some of you probably already do get emails from me, but if you don't, and feel free to just sign up either way. But we'll pass that around. So yeah, I will start by just sharing a little bit about what Labor Religion Coalition and the Cairo Center do, and then would really love to have a little bit of time for discussion. And what we do is very much related to what I was talking about in the sermon. So if there are things that came up for you that you wanted to ask about or talk about more, we can definitely do that. So I am the director of the New York State Labor Religion Coalition, which is an organization that started in 1980 actually, and as you might imagine, it started with folks from labor, organized labor, and the faith community coming together. Really, its roots kind of go back to the Roman Catholic Church in this area in particular, and teachers union. But over the years has sort of gone through different phases and makeups. And Labor Religion Coalition at the beginning of this year became a program of the Cairo Center for Religions, Rights, and Social Justice, which is a national organization that was based out of Union Theological Seminary in New York City, but works nationwide. The mission of the Labor Religion Coalition is to unite faith, labor, and community in a statewide movement for social, racial, and economic justice, grounded in our deeply held moral and political values. And the mission of the Cairo Center is to raise up generations of faith and community leaders committed to building a movement to end poverty. So I actually went to Union Theological Seminary, and that's how I originally got connected with what is now the Cairo Center. It was called the Poverty Initiative at the time, and I did my like field education there, and so had worked with folks at the Cairo Center for a bunch of years. And as I'm sure some of you know, the Cairo Center is also the national co-anchor of the Poor People's Campaign. And a lot of what Labor Religion Coalition focused on over the past, I guess, 6 or 7 years now was the Poor People's Campaign in New York State. So there have been a lot of collaboration between between our organizations for a while. So what does that work look like right now, and how can people and churches be involved? We're in kind of a crisis moment, folks. And so we're living in, it's kind of a cliche right now, but we are living in unprecedented times in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of different kind of ways that we need to be responding in these times. So one thing that Labor Religion Coalition does, and that I talked about in the sermon this morning, is around statewide policy. And I think as folks, as you heard, and as I'm sure folks are tracking, there's a lot of big shifts in policies that are already starting to really hurt people across the state. And that is gonna just get worse in the coming months. So on a bunch of different fronts. I mean, one obviously is the activity of ICE, that I know Westminster, a bunch of folks here are very connected with some of the rapid response and efforts that are happening here in the capital region. That we can expect to continue. And also kind of how communities are able to organize is gonna help determine like what happens and how bad it gets. So I know folks in this community are part of some of the rapid response kinds of things. And just like strengthening the connections in our communities across different communities, across like immigrant communities and non-immigrant communities is really, really critical in this time. I know folks Focus and other folks are really part of doing that. We also are gonna start seeing the impacts of the big, beautiful bill that passed over the summer. One of the most immediate impacts is that how New York State funded our essential health plan, which kind of, not to get too much into the weeds, but part of that legislation federally prevented New York State from using federal dollars to pay for the health care for actually legal immigrants. This isn't actually about undocumented immigrants. They took away that. And so basically in order to keep basically what's happening is New York is proposing to get rid of the essential plan and go back to kind of regular Medicaid. So because the state was gonna have to pay $7.5 billion more it was losing $7.5 billion in federal funding. So that's kind of one of the most like immediate things that's happening because of the bill that passed this summer. But other cuts to Medicaid are gonna start rolling out, like all around the country. There's a bunch of hospitals in New York State that are gonna be at risk of closing because of losing funding. New York State is also gonna face a question about how and whether it's gonna absorb increased costs to maintain SNAP, which is food stamps. There's a bunch of things coming down the line. And this is on top of what, as I was saying this morning, was already a situation where we have the most unequal state in the country, and about almost getting close to half of New Yorkers are poor or low income, so don't earn enough to pay the like basic standard of living. So the question is going to be, what does New York State do about this? And so far, our governor and some legislative leaders seem very content to kind of let things deteriorate and try to get a political advantage from that. In other words, to say, all these bad things are happening, that sucks, but the Republicans in Congress did that. And isn't that too bad? And please vote for me for governor next year, or vote for me for the legislature, etc. And also because they don't, a big portion of the Democratic Party in New York State has never really been like supporting what a lot of people have been calling for a long time. We have all these billionaires and Wall Street in the state. There's no reason why the state can't fund the things, the policies that we know that are shown to make people's lives better. So that's kind of the situation that we're facing at the state level, and it really is a time for makes a lot of sense to be focusing on what's happening in Washington, of course, but it also, I think, is really important for folks who live in a place like New York to be demanding that our state doesn't actually just have to say like, oh, well, this is really sad what Trump did. There are things that they can do to show leadership and help people and prevent like the really, really devastating things that are about to come if we don't take action. So that's what I'll say for right now about New York State. Another thing that Kairos is really doing a lot around right now is about Christian nationalism and really grappling with what it is, how we have gotten to this point where Christian nationalists are really in charge at the federal level in all three branches of government and also many states. And what does this also say about Christianity in these times and the role of churches in these times? There's the Christian nationalism isn't just a threat to kind of like civic values or the idea of separation of church and state. It's a threat to Christianity, both because the state is trying to say what Christianity is, that Christianity is this violent, nationalist, racist, domineering force, and if like that is what it is. If you are saying something else, it's not Christianity. So that is certainly a threat to Christianity. And it's not what Christianity, like Christianity actually does say something about how we're supposed to build a society. And it is the opposite of what so we have at stake not just like countering the heresy that they're promoting, but also like living out what we actually are called to do and be in the world. So this is there's an important role for people of faith in general to play at this time, but also in particular for Christians to play at this time. That's about both what we're doing out in the world and also the theology that we're teaching and practicing and promoting. And so there are some programs that are kind of in motion now that I can say a little bit about, and then there's also stuff that sort of will emerge in the next few months. We're part of an effort that's a multi-faith effort that's right now working on some kind of public ritual and actions around Ramadan, Passover, and Lent this year, which are all kind of overlap. And so there's not really any details, but stay tuned. Hopefully this will be like a national multi-faith kind of thing that faith communities can plug into, because these holidays actually are about resisting empire and injustice and just celebrating it, acknowledging these periods of our liturgical calendar are political acts. And if we can just do those in public, we believe that's going to be an important counter to what is happening. So that's one thing. And I'll just mention there's a program that Kairos and Showing Up for Racial Justice, which is another national organization, folks might be familiar with SURGE, that is about organizing white people to counter racism. Kairos and SURGE now have the congregational training program that we're doing. We're in kind of the first full round of it, but it's a 9-month program for teams from congregations to be trained around like understanding Christian nationalism, but also understanding its connection to our like overall political and economic system, and learning about how organizing and movement building can be a way to, or really, we believe is the way to counter effectively Christian nationalism and build up like the alternative that we need. So actually First Presbyterian is in that program this round. Our next one will start in September of 2026 and run through June 2027. And that applications aren't due till June 1st. But we're actually going to start having some Q&A sessions around the next round pretty soon. I think, well, I'm not going to get the date right actually, but if you signed up on that sheet, I will make sure you get an email about that. So, yeah, actually, I think I will stop there because I would love to hear any questions or thoughts that you all want to share. Yeah.
Well, I'll start. So I left Syracuse in 1980 after 5 years of study at the university. My son went to RIT in Rochester, and another one went to Buffalo. I also worked for SUNY Central. I traveled over the whole state, all the different SUNYs. And Syracuse was really struggling late 70s, early 80s. Rochester struggles and Buffalo struggles. So I'm interested in hearing about the labor portion, because if there isn't industry or jobs available, then in those areas, and even Albany, but how does the cycle kind of get interrupted, the poverty cycle, and then labor's in the title of your group, so I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's definitely a big part of the story in upstate New York is the shifts in the economy in the 70s and 80s and 90s of deindustrialization and globalization and automation that have really devastated I mean, essentially like Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo is kind of like the Rust Belt. That is like one of the key questions that we're faced with right now is how do we expect people to meet their basic needs for a bunch, well, actually like an actually not that long period of time. It kind of worked to say that like people in our economy could get a job that they could earn like a good living to support a family. And of course that was uneven across, different communities and different demographics. But with the shift to automation and the kind of like loss of good paying manufacturing jobs in this country, like then that has been harder and harder to do. And so that is kind of a big picture level, like we as a society have to answer that question. Are we either going to make sure that people have jobs that pay a living wage that they can support a family on? Or are we going to say, are we going to detach the idea of work from meeting your needs?
Or so it doesn't look good for those three cities if there isn't a base of those types of job opportunities.
No, I mean, if so, there's a lot of ways to solve this problem if we decide that we want to solve the problem. If we make the priority solving the problem, and that can include both work and benefits for people. And there is actually a lot like care work. There's a lot of work to be done, right? Like there's a lot, and if we can set a standard where, for example, like people who work in hospitals or people who work in home care or teachers or childcare, like there's lots of work that has to be done. And that can be a career that supports people. And I think there's like this idea of like tax credits, child tax credits, there are other ways to guarantee that people, if the economy does not support jobs that have a living wage, that you guarantee people have housing and healthcare and enough food to eat and childcare and education and all that stuff. So I think that's
I don't know, I'm not getting a warm fuzzy about Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo, and well, Herkimer. We were talking about bike riding. We did a long distance trip and went through Herkimer. The thing was a ghost town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if it qualifies as a city, but
Yeah, it doesn't,
it's,
it
it's
doesn't,
dying and.
yeah, Binghamton, the whole southern
Yeah.
tier, yeah.
The whole, yeah,
Yeah.
the whole sort.
So.
Yeah, but the idea that, I mean, one of the, like, the thing that the last few governors have tried to sell us is like, we can give a tax break to a corporation to come in here and they're gonna create jobs and that's gonna be the answer. And it's not.
Well, it hasn't happened, right? I mean,
I mean, the Buffalo Billion, for example.
Tanked.
Exactly, because
Yes.
it's not, it was not set up. It was not set up with the priority of like
Mhm.
the well-being of that community.
Right.
It was set up with the
Putting
priority.
chip manufacturing plants in outside of Utica, but those are very high tech.
Right,
Yeah, so
right.
there's,
Yeah, so it's not, I mean, there's like. There's ways and a lot of like policy proposals out there about how, what would it look like to. Focus an economic plan around like the well-being of people on the planet. And that's what, like, that's what we have to. That's what we have to do.
I've recently
Actually, I have
become
a
more
question
panicked.
right here. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm the mother, so I don't.
You can talk to me anytime.
Myself the lights.
Yeah, my panic about jobs and the future of society is really exaggerated by all the news about AI and the way that
Yeah.
it's going to take over. Well, the sort of lower level, I say, white collar jobs. You know, so many clerical level jobs are also going to go.
Yeah.
And the problem of unemployment is just going to snowball.
Yeah, very quickly. Yeah. So I think that, I mean, that speaks to like the poor in our society are the canary in the coal mine. Like what folks have been experiencing for decades at the bottom of our society is increasingly what the majority of us are going to experience. And so we have to get organized. Like there's no shortcut to having people be connected to each other and like sharing of values and vision for the kind of world that we deserve and want to see, and then being able to make it happen because we have the organized numbers and the organized like vision for society. And there's not really any other way forward. Which is hope, like that might sound like doom and gloom, but to me, that's actually hopeful because we can do that, right? That is within our power to do. It doesn't take having access to power and resources that we don't have. It just takes having people, which we do have, and a vision and values, which we also have. Yeah.
Well, as I'm sitting here, I've been schooled by my child just for a very long time. But it's really getting crystallized for me that the kind of classic paradigm where I'm investing in corporations and the corporations or businesses will create the jobs. And if people work hard at their jobs and are diligent and saving and et cetera, everything will go well. But technology has changed more rapidly than we can all adapt to. So that changing and the powers that be and the empire that Jesus confronted and empires that many of us participate in and live in, consolidate their power by pitting those who are better off against those who are poor. Because it's easy to do. It's easy to say, well, that person's lazy, that person's not educated. And I can tell you from recent experience in my life, just as a volunteer on my board of my homeowners association, I see the people who've achieved, like me, a relatively comfortable life. But I also see that they are they're lucky. I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. to be where I am. A lot of it I see as my good fortune. And I see that we who have good fortune are just as easily persuaded to not work very hard. You know, we'd like to enjoy our retirement. We want to enjoy this and that, the fruits of our labors, we call them. And we're very easily persuaded to avoid grappling with the decisions we need to make together and share our resources appropriately. And so this situation that we're confronting, which endangers all of us, does require a complete reframing of this notion of people who deserve things and people who don't deserve things, or people who have to prove their worth. None of us has to prove our worth. We have to recognize our common bonds and be willing to, as you said in your wonderful stewardship message, to joyfully and to a certain extent sacrificially give. And if we can make that case to our fellow citizens that this can be a joyful thing to pursue one another's well-being. I do think that there's a way to get over the gloom and doom, which I hear a lot about.
An interesting dynamic I'm watching at our breakfast program and Poor People's Campaign, led by Joe, is how he's recruited more than a handful, probably about a dozen people who are definitely in the homeless, low-income stratosphere, and they meet every Thursday at the breakfast program, and they have done things like march down and politic down here in state legislature, and where I'm leading is watching how much it lifts up those people that are part of that action for the breakfast program, because a lot of these people I've known for multiple years, and this one event has probably had more impact on their self-esteem than almost any other event that's happened. And so I'm just trying to do one positive bit of light that's coming out of Poor People's Campaign.
Yeah, thank you for lifting that up. Yeah, and that's just really true, right? Part of this is like a spiritual, I mean, what you were just saying too, like that we are inherently worthy. Like that is not the message that the society gives people, especially people at the very bottom. And like it's transformative to like start to feel that something different.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I see it with, say, the environmental movement, there are so many different environmental organizations and they're all doing a lot, and seems to me like that's had a big effect, and there's a lot of success that comes out of that. So what are other organizations that you might be working with for the labor religion campaign, other organizations who would be coming together to create that larger influence?
Yeah, a lot. And I mean, I'm happy to say that has actually improved a lot in the last year. Like nationally, I think for a long time, there's a lot of organizations like in this region, across the state, around the country that are concerned about similar work. And sometimes we collaborate and sometimes we don't collaborate very well. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes it's like personalities. Sometimes it's because people are competing for the same resources for their work. And so that like distorts things. But there really is a different kind of spirit of like people recognizing we gotta put the petty things aside and work together in this moment. So I was just a couple weeks ago at a gathering with like almost 1,000 organizers from different organizations around the country who are part of different networks that historically haven't really worked together that much. So things like People's Action, Center for Popular Democracy. There's some faith-based groups, Gamaliel, Faith in Action. But these are groups that have like affiliates all around the country. So that's really good to see. And labor, obviously. There's the May Day Strong coalition that was behind the May Day actions this past year, but is also a bunch of different unions coming together. So there's a lot in motion, like locally, like Citizen Action, Vocal New York, Make the Road, which isn't really up here, but there's New York State has a bunch of affiliates of these groups. And what was I just gonna say? Oh yeah, but then also I think the reality also is that we could get all of these groups together and our existing sort of membership is not big enough to be what we need. So we really have to be in this moment, like organizing in a new way and meeting people where they are. And I think faith communities have a role to play in that, like we're in touch with people who aren't already a member of these groups. I mean, I have done actions and rallies for more than a decade now where it's a lot of the same people are showing up at each other's things. And, you know, I'm sure some of us here are members of like 5 different groups and we're just, you know, we're going to the same well over and over again. And there's a role for that, but like we have to take a hard look at ourselves and get beyond that, because this moment calls for something different, and more people are waking up to it. I mean, the No King stuff, like people are getting involved who have not been, and that's really hopeful. That was kind of a long answer. Sorry. Yeah.
One small thing that's going on yesterday and today, if you don't know about it, Hoffman Car Wash is doing their campaign, bring some non-perishable food, you know, canned goods, whatever, to any of their car washes, and you get a free car wash. The one in Delmar is still closed, so yesterday I went to one on Central Avenue in Colony. But, you know, it's just to create help fill the food banks at this point, so they're doing something there.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think another thing that, especially we've been talking about Kairos lately, like there's, I think sometimes a dichotomy in churches sometimes about that there's like charity and justice work, and these are separate, and one is good and one is bad. A lot of like for progressives that like charity is like not enough and bad. I mean, and that's overstating it, but it actually is. I think what we're trying to challenge people to see that these things don't need to be separate, and actually when they are separate, it can be a problem. That like we have to take care of each other in this moment, and people are, you know, people aren't going to be getting SNAP benefits probably in like next week. People are going to really be hungry very soon, and when we can organize ourselves to help feed people, that can and should be part of building the kind of community that we need to then also just take action together in all kinds of ways. So I think those things, we sometimes see those things as separate, like the structural change from the like giving people food, but we really need to, I think, get to a point where we're not seeing it like that. Yeah.
A quick advertisement following on feedback. Out in the hallway, we have a bucket, and that bucket is for food donations that go right across the street, hand delivered by me, to the Focus Food Pantry. So if anybody wants to bring in non-perishable anything, it's right out there in the hallway.
The green plastic bin next to the coat hangers.
Well, that's a wonderful ministry, Ned, thanks
Oh,
for that. Oh.
Wes, I think that when you're speaking of how big the organizing has to be in order to make a difference, I was really heartened by the No Kings marches across the nation. I always think twice about getting involved because I fear violence. I don't want to be snapped up by ice. I don't want to be hit by I don't want to experience violence in those incidents. And I didn't participate in actively. I watched on the curb. But that has to tell us something. There's more than just a couple of active groups out there. There are more moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and out of work people and kindergarten teachers and that are serious and fearful.
Yeah,
So we have to just flip that and make it joy.
yeah,
Make it, yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna win, we're gonna, whatever we have to do. Promote change, demand change,
Yeah.
whatever we have to do.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very hopeful. And authoritarianism really thrives on people feeling like they can't do that. And so every time that breaks through, it helps make the next breakthrough possible.
In terms of things that help, I get, between the snail mail fundraising appeals and, I got under one the other day from a coalition of Christians and Jews, wanting to fund dinners to have together. So anyway, that's one. And then, of course, email, all of the requests to sign petitions. Does signing an email petition make any difference? Does that kind of work? Because often you see it as just, sign the petition and then it comes to fundraising request. So I'm wondering if signing those petitions makes any difference.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I think what I'll say is like, it's important to be connected to a community that's doing things together, taking action together. So I think and part of like a petition is often like, so they can follow up with you in the future about the next thing.
Yeah.
Which if like, I think it's important for people to kind of know what is the community or the organization that you're committed to, in terms of committed to participating when they say, like, we're all signing this specific petition to the governor right now, like, that you're like, I'm part of this group, I'm gonna do what they ask. And also that you're part of this group and committed to helping it grow and thrive. So I think that like, the kind of being bombarded with like 20 different organizations, like, no, it doesn't always amount to much. But I think especially in this moment, like being part of an actual community of practice, which could be your church, that's like committed to sticking together and growing and doing things together is like really the thing. And sometimes that means signing a petition, but maybe not every petition that comes across.
But
Yeah.
it's not just petitions, it's if you can send one letter to one member of Congress, member of the Assembly, member of the state Senate, National Senate, I think that letters can often make a difference, especially if you're targeted on a particular issue. If you can find legislation that works, that can help. But, if you want to say, we're concerned about what's going to happen with WIC, say, and I would like to say that we can't let that, this hurt our state's people who are needing that program. That that can often have a lot more effect than, 50 petitions. Well, maybe not 50, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I would really make a case that right now, what happens at the state level is really important. And knowing who your assembly person and your state senator are, and having them hear from you on a regular basis. Like, your assembly and senator should know who you are, because they hear from you a bunch. And they have you have more influence over your assembly person or your state senator than you do your congressperson, because you're closer to the ground. And of course, if they know you have a whole bunch of other people who you're speaking for, that also makes it land more. So yeah, there really are we really can influence what these people are doing. Yeah.
I send a lot of things out for climate action now as an app, and I'm often targeting my representative being Bill Steck. And I like Bill Steck a lot, and because of that, over the years, we've got to know each other. We've gone back and forth and such, and I want to talk to him and so forth. And I asked him, I said, does it really make any difference to you? And he said it makes a lot of difference to him, getting these feedback, including the petition. We managed to send him a petition with 400 signatures for beyond plastic time and stuff like that. And he doesn't respond to all of them. And exactly what you said, there are certain people that he kind of go, oh, yeah, there they are again, and he'll respond to them occasionally. But he looks at it for one. So that's one good thing. And local, as he said.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't even know what time it is.
So it is past the hour. I don't know what time we're supposed to wrap up.
Good. Time for lunch?
Okay.
Oh, kickoff's at 1, so. We all gotta get home for that. We should pray praying for the Jets.
If it's a coffee pot, it's empty.
Oh, that's
It's been a pleasure to have you with us. I'm frequently in the building and I frequently see you.
Yeah.
But it was a delight to hear the message this morning.
Where is your office actually, guys?
Just upstairs.
That's
Bill says.
Oh, the old session now.
that's true.
I know where that is, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And they graciously give us access to our PA system. We have to adjust it.
I'm coming for your air conditioner this week.
Okay.
That one too, I just noticed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great that you come. I haven't, you should have come before. I will certainly connect.
This picture's right on the hallway too. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or who's in our building, yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
Bring your parents too. Where do you,
In the Rochester area, in Fairport.
Oh, yeah.
bit of a commute?
Yeah.
I don't think this is a surprise to you, for sure, that, our proximity to the Capitol is attractive to advocacy groups.
Yeah.
Before I knew about, after I knew about Westminster, I came with children's advocacy groups. School age care, child care, working parents, all of those, and we would meet and then figure our strategy and walk down to the, I keep wanting to say walk to the hill, but that's what I'm saying. We did that too. And many of the advocacy groups use a large assembly room, you probably know that already. And they're in the building all the time. So we have access. We should think of some ways to invite our people to get hooked up with what's already organized right here in our building. I've participated in a number of Beyond Plastics events.
Yeah,
They're large, they're organized, they're legitimate. And it works.
yeah,
It's slow going, but it works.
yeah.
And other groups have been in here as well, so. Feel free to bring your people here, and if we're gonna be going out with you, bring your people here.
Yeah,
And let us know.
yes, definitely. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely one of the reasons, we moved offices, just, I don't know how, it hasn't been that long, like 3 years ago, maybe,
Here, so.
yeah. Yeah, cause we use this space.
Well, Judy just said something that I was thinking of, but because I don't know where I heard this, but you know, speaking about the rates of poverty and child poverty in the cities that you were mentioning, Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo, and the tax credits, the child tax credits that could help. And then I was thinking along the lines of the Beyond Plastics, you know, advocating for all the different county representatives, and having rally days and doing it. So I mean, you may already do stuff like that, I don't know, but.
Yeah,
But certainly, you know, using our places as springboard and anything that we could do to help, I guess, with getting that out right to the budgetary.
Sure.
Folk.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah,
The
we,
It's on the 3rd floor, you know that.
yeah, we work with the Presbytery, we're very happy to be a mission partner of the Albany Presbytery. And, yeah, you will be getting an email and then additional emails, although not too many. But November 20th is gonna be a virtual lobby day, with the Invest in Our New York campaign around saying like, look, this excuse that we can't afford to help people keep their healthcare, for example, is not true. Like the legislature needs to raise the resources that the state needs to fill in these cuts and, do things like the recommendations. So, November 20th, it's virtual, so we'll be setting up virtual meetings with legislators that day. So I'll send a sign up for that, and then there will be a lot, I'm sure, on the calendar as where the legislature starts the first week of the year.
I thought I heard something at one time that during the LaGuardia's era, there was something put into the Constitution about the state constitution about caring for people that didn't have, you know, so
It's true.
if you don't take those actions, then we're violating the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Eric Adams really kind of took a bold step, I guess it's a couple years now, to try to basically get say that New York City didn't have to meet these requirements anymore because there is a constitutional right in the state that to provide housing and kind of provide basic things.
So it's interesting that Bonnie is, you know, taking that route and being extremely successful. Kind of a balance.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, like 3/4 of people in the US agree with things like healthcare for everybody and including like raising taxes on the wealthy. That's a very, very popular position across party lines.
But wouldn't they move to a state that's not gonna tax them?
No, there's been a bunch of research, including Massachusetts just passed higher tax rate on millionaires. It doesn't happen. It's the argument that is always raised, but there isn't evidence to back it up. Cause people, like, there's lots of reasons that people wanna live in New York State or wanna have their business in New York State.
Yeah, some.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been losing population.
Yeah, primarily to other higher tax states. So it's not that, that people are leaving because of taxes. And it's more the like middle income people who are
Mhm.
leaving.
Hmm.
So these are,
Is that job related? They can find a job elsewhere?
I think it's job related to some degree, and also, like, we have a regressive tax structure in the state, partly because, property taxes are how we fund, like, Medicaid, for example, more than other states do.
Mhm.
So it is like the high tax burden in New York is more on like middle income and lower income people than wealthier people. And so that's what, like, that is not good for anyone except those wealthier people. And that's part of why, like, I mean, there's a lot of things, but if you had, like a social safety net, and that if it was affordable for people to live here, that population thing would get better. But it's not the wealthy who are finding it unaffordable.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, they can afford it.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, New York City has an income tax, and that's like, I've worked in New York City, but I was never gonna live there.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm thinking back to what you said earlier, that, the Democrats in New York State seem to be taking a very cautious approach that almost like let the chips fall where they may, then we'll use that to our benefit in the
Yeah.
next election cycle. But when I was in law school, one of the things I kept hearing was, the states are often the laboratories to show the rest of the country what can be achieved. And I would think this is a perfect moment for the state to make these investments in the well-being of its people, because you certainly will have plenty of other states that aren't going to do that, and you'll be able to show the benefit of that, and you'll be able to help convince all those in New York State. Certainly more people voted for Trump in 2024 than in New York State than voted for him in 2020. And to show them what happens when the state invests in the well-being of its people. And getting back to the cost of the full package of the child, poverty reduction advisories package of 9 billion, just to reduce by 50%. But the cost of poverty is something like, if I remember the comptroller's report, something like $60 billion a year.
Yeah.
So for 9 billion over, I think it's a period, is it 9 billion a year over, or
I think it's 9 billion a year. Yeah.
to save 60 billion?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And to have fewer people in great distress. And then you have more people who are well enough that they also can help care. I think the idea of the caring economy, goes beyond just the teachers and healthcare groups and.
Yeah.
Includes pastors.
Yeah.
You would think that with
Yeah.
mathematical, arguments would be appealing to billionaires, but.
No, I think we're seeing very clearly it doesn't. But yeah, it isn't like this idea that there's an economic, like, oh, this would be nice to do, but it's too expensive. It's just absolutely the opposite.
Well, and then the other thing I had heard was the disparity, New York State has the greatest income disparity. And the tons of billionaires in here, most likely in New York City, I can't imagine too many other places, but it's just. kind of.
I'm sitting here taking part in thinking back to the Vietnam era. And the fact that enough people got energized, got upset, marched, whatever, that changed the course of our history with the Vietnam conflict. So that fast forward to today, and as you said, the necessary organizing, and that if enough people can get on board, and the fact that we had the No Kings, 2 No Kings marches so far, that says, all right, we're headed that way, so anything we can do to kind of foster that sort of organizing, the work you do, that's.
And I'm waiting for your email. And I'll be tapping people on the shoulder, okay?
Thank you.
I think we're worn out, we're denying us.
Oh, yeah, one more, sorry.
One more?
Yeah.
I just worried about funding for the colleges.
Yeah.
How is that gonna affect kids who's going to school for the next 4 years? I know they have that, the Excelsior program, is that gonna be affected? Whatever helps you that. Science, she's in science and I'm worried about, is she gonna make it through science without any funding?
Yeah, I mean, we have to make sure those things don't get cut and in fact get expanded. But yeah, I mean, I think everything, that's what's at stake too. Yeah,
I can't afford college. I'm
Yeah.
dependent on that Excelsior program.
Yeah.
It helps.
yeah, and a lot of people are, and so the more that like we all like stay engaged and make it impossible, make it politically impossible for them to take it away.
But the Excelsior program is funded by New York State, right?
Yeah. Yes,
But it has nothing to do with the federal.
right, but the problem is that, and well, the problem is that New York State is losing billions of federal funding. So either they need to raise revenue or they're gonna cut things to fill that in.
Yeah, so you're talking food and housing and education.
Yeah.
Money that's not gonna be there, or
Yeah.
not gonna be coming in from the federal government.
Well, pretty soon they're gonna deliver the sandwiches, so I think we have to be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, that's.
Yeah,
Thank you.